This is High School Not So Much a Musical, a podcast that takes you on a ride through the peaks and valleys of a high school journey. Here are your presenters, Nitin Jaladanki and Ayush Agarwal.
Yeah, I can imagine how hard it would be for like students, because I know like myself, even being in high school, it was still very hard online because just the level of focus and attention you're able to give to school isn't nearly as much, and it's also not as fun. So there definitely is a level to there definitely is a huge benefit to in-person learning, which is what we actually also talked about yesterday with the public speaker, and how like the public speaking skills of students drastically increases with in-person learning. You know, they're able to participate easier. They just talk more in general, and they develop their social aspects really, really well. So could you talk about some of the ways that you've kind of helped children and throughout your career in education kind of develop that social aspect, develop their public speaking skills? How, like, are there any activities that you do in class to help students kind of focus on public speaking, etc.? And do you think this is an important issue that schools either teach or don't teach?
Yeah, excellent question. Yes, absolutely. First and foremost, public speaking is so important. And kind of going hand in hand with that is self-esteem. And I remember, and maybe, you know, depending upon your experiences in elementary, I was kind of a shy kid. Sometimes I kind of thought, oh, if I open my mouth, I'm going to sound weird, you know. And, you got, 20 or 35 other, kids listening to you. And that's one thing I teach the kids, that we always be respectful listeners. And I tell them, your opinion counts. Your voice is important. And so one of the things I do to build up their self-esteem is we do something called stretches and affirmations. And it is probably the best 8 to 10 minutes I spend every day. I have 2 cores. I'm the core English language arts teacher at 5th grade, and my partner teaches the math and science. And one of the things I do, which I think helps them with their public speaking and their confidence, is we all stand up, and then I have them give themselves a hug. And for the affirmation part, they'll say things like, I believe that I'm in perfect health from the top of my head to the soles of my feet. I am smart. I have a kind heart. I am loved. I am needed. I am giving. I am unique. I am special. I am creative. This sort of thing. And then what I'll do is I'll turn to one of the kids and say, okay, guys, let's give each other a virtual, high 10 in the air. What do you think we should send? What type of positive message should we give to each other today? And some of the kids will say, you are awesome, or you are loved, or you are special, or you are smart. And I'll say, okay, guys, on 3, virtual high 10 in the air, to each other. You are awesome. 1, 2, 3. And then we do a virtual high 10. And then with regards to the speaking, I always encourage them to use an I statement, because sometimes, people in normal conversations don't normally say, well, I believe that, such and such, or I think that. Most of the time, if you were to ask me, Mr. Beltz, what color is that flower? And I'd say orange. Well, one of the things that we try to do in the classroom to develop their public speaking skills is to use an I statement, saying I think, or believe, or I see. So, I'll give you an example. Jimmy, what color is the flower? Mr. Beltz, I see that the flower appears to be orange. Okay, thank you, Jimmy. And then another thing we do is I have a daily quote that's very inspirational. And I pick different ones from different cultures, everything from Martin Luther King to the Dalai Lama to Les Brown. And one of the things that Les Brown had shared was that you don't need to be great to get started, but you have to get started to become great. And so what I'll do is I'll have the kids copy the quote down. They'll talk to each other. And that's another important part, public speaking. They got to feel comfortable around their peers. So we do what we call an elbow partner, whoever's sitting to your left or your right. What does the quote mean to you? And then the kids will speak up. I believe that the quote means that, if you want to be successful in life, you've got to have a plan and you've got to believe in yourself. and not allow negativity. Okay, thank you, Mary. And, we all applaud for her. I tell the kids, everybody say, thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary. We give her a round of applause. And then we move on. And I think that reaffirms that kids do have a voice. And, it's kind of, it's really sad, looking at the pandemic situation and seeing some of the high numbers of suicides and suicidal thoughts that even young kids have. They feel that everything is so dismal. And what I and many, 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 many of my peers do is we're trying to make kids feel good about themselves in a genuine way and explore their hidden talents, and to know that their voice is important, that their voice does count, their opinion is important, so that they don't have, even some of the shyest kids, they don't have to feel like they have to sit there and just kind of, retreat into their shell. We want to bring them out. And so absolutely, public speaking is absolutely vital and important for raising confidence, self-esteem, and it reaffirms who they are as people. And some people say, well, they're kids. Yes, they're kids, but they're human beings too. They have feelings, they have thoughts and dreams, they have fears, ambitions, just like we all do. And it's just really, really important to build up kids' self-esteem and know that they can do what they want to do. And I can't stress that enough. It's really an ongoing process. And I think the kids really enjoy. I notice as the school year has gone on this year, some of the kids that normally would not participate normally will raise their hand. Mr. Beltz, I'd like to, comment on the quote. Okay, go for it. Cool. And then we explore different opinions and vantage points. And somebody said it the best. Somebody said that we should not teach children what to think, but rather how to think. And I think that's a pretty deep statement. And I really agree with that.
So you've talked about all the great things that's happened because ever since you became a teacher, you got to interact with great kids. You got to have a big influence on their life, because especially if you start music and arts from a young age, it'll really be beneficial on your life. But I wanted to know why did you start teaching? What inspired you to start teaching? Because obviously you've had great experiences because you became a teacher, but why did you want to become a teacher in the start?
Well, I was doing property management at the time. My wife and I were living in the Bay Area. And what I had done is, when I graduated from CSU Stanislaus with my Bachelor of Arts in Psychology, I had a few jobs. I was a classroom aide for in a classroom that was set up at a boys' home. And then I went on and became a drug and alcohol abuse counselor at an inpatient hospital setting for a few years. And then we got into property management, and I was getting really burned out. I mean, there's only so many toilets you can plunge and so many walls you can paint when you're turning over apartments, right? When you're doing apartment maintenance. And I was just getting really burned out. And my wife said, you know what, hon? She said, you need to work with kids. So she called up National University in San Jose, and kind of long story short, they got me, I got enrolled in the program. And what I did was I quit my job in property management, and I was substitute teaching full time during the day. And then I believe it was 2 nights a week from 6 to 10, I would attend classes at National University. And I don't know if you're familiar with National University, but it's a very accelerated credentialing program. Normally it takes, I think, about 2 years, 2 to 2.5, 3 years through most situations with credentialing programs. But this one was about a year. And I realized when I was substitute teaching, I said, yeah, this is where I need to be. I give a lot of the credit to my mom. My mom was a very loving person. She was a social worker. She would work in some of the really low socioeconomic portions of town and help with the distribution of commodities, the free cheese and milk and things like that, and helping senior citizens. And so I think what made me want to teach was that my mom instilled within me that, helping people is the most important thing, and that people count, people matter. And so I give my dear mom all the credit.
Yeah, that's great to hear, especially with like the importance of family being super, super important. Especially during like COVID, I think like everyone was able to bond with their family a lot more due to the increased free time. Everyone was at home, etc. And speaking of family, a lot of people also unfortunately did lose their loved ones during the pandemic due to COVID itself. And you yourself similarly have combated a disease, cancer, that takes the lives of millions annually.
Yeah.
And not just once, but twice. So could you talk about that experience and how you were able to combat it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, it was interesting because when I got my first diagnosis of prostate cancer, it was early stage first. It was early stage 1. And that was back in fall of 2017. And so when I got the diagnosis after we had the biopsy, you could have knocked me over with a feather. I mean, I'm like, what? I'm a relatively young person. Nobody in my family's had prostate cancer. How is that possible? And so after exploring a lot of options, we decided to go with radiation therapy called CyberKnife. And what it basically is it's about 5 1-hour radiation sessions. And, my oncologist and my, everybody around me seemed to feel, hey, this is a good way to go. It's going to, you're going to basically nuke your cancer and you'd be done with it. Well, yes and no. It appeared to do a good job on eradicating the cancer. However, I fell within the 4%, less than 4% that developed complications from cancer. And I developed severe blood clots in both my legs from below my knees up to my hips. And also, I had some scar tissue that was creating some issues for me. And I almost died of renal failure. I almost passed away 3 different times. And by the grace of God, I'm still here. But it was a long, arduous process to get through that. And so then when it was all kind of said and done, or so I thought, by around September of 2018, post-radiation, getting rid of the blood clots, I'd spent almost 3 weeks in the hospital, this, that, and the other. Then everything seemed to be hunky-dory. And, there's kind of this magic window. I shouldn't say magic window, but there's kind of this rule of thumb that as long as your blood panels come back normal within a certain amount that they measure for 5 years, then after the 5th year, I'm sure you've heard of it too, you're considered quote unquote cancer-free. Well, everything seemed to be fine up until about Christmas of 2020. And just before Christmas, my numbers just like shot up. And kind of long story short, they realized that the cancer had returned. Well, they wanted to do another biopsy, and I'd almost died from an infection from the first biopsy. So kind of long story short, I said, no, I don't want to do that. And by the way, I encourage everybody, be your own advocate. Get 2 or 3 or 4 different medical opinions before you do anything. And what I did was I ended up getting a CT scan, and they realized that this is kind of the cruel irony in the whole thing, that the cancer was gone from my prostate, but that, as my oncologist from Stanford said, it decided to relocate and it went into my lymph nodes in my pelvic area. And they said it's they can't cure it, they can't do surgery, that they basically put me on medication, chemo, oral meds for the rest of my life. Okay, so that was a major setback. And keep in mind, the pandemic is going in full swing, and kids are. I'm teaching half the kids online, half the kids in person, and then the cancer came back, and the chemotherapy kind of, my body chemistry went cattywampus, and by the grace of God, it's all evened out now. But it was just a hellacious journey, and you think you've won the battle, and then you get a recurrence of the cancer. But the good thing is, they said that the medication, they're basically slowing it down. But I'm a firm believer in the power of God and the healing power. And I know that my cancer is healed. I have great faith in that. And I feel really great up until about 3 weeks ago, when my family got the Omicron. But fortunately, it was nothing more than kind of like a moderate to, head cold, basically. But excuse me, I have to apologize. My voice is still a little bit recovering. There's still a little bit of fatigue. But life goes on. And I share that with my kids too. I said, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. I'm still here. Life goes on. And the journey with being a cancer survivor has been really interesting. I never thought in a million years, it happens to somebody else. Somebody else gets it. Oh man, I'm going to dodge this bullet. No, sometimes things happen. And as my brother-in-law says it so well, he says, you know what, Rob? He says, everything happens for a reason. So what's kind of interesting about the cancer diagnosis is that basically when I got the diagnosis, there were some things that I really wanted to do. And one of those was get back into filmmaking. I had aspirations of being the next Steven Spielberg or George Lucas when I was a kid. And I got back into videography, and I wrote my book and published it. And I use that as an example to the kids. And I tell the kids too, I say, I've survived cancer twice, and, I'm still here by the grace of God. And I showed them, what my book looks like on Amazon. I said, you know what, guys, there's no difference between me and you. You know what the only difference is? I've been around longer. I just have more experience. I'm not any smarter or any better than you. I said, we're all smart and good people together. And what I can do, you can do it. And so I think in a lot of ways, the cancer diagnosis has really helped me reevaluate life. It's bonded my marriage and my family relationships. Things that used to really tick me off, I was able to come to peace with and forgive, people that had said or done things to me in the past. And it's just been a kind of a wild ride. But I think ultimately, this may sound really weird because nobody wants cancer, and I certainly didn't. But all in all, I think there is a silver lining in the cloud.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think that's go ahead, Ayush.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, perfect. So, Mr. Beltz, what we do for every single podcast is we like to ask our guest speaker to kind of give the audience some tips, whatever it be. It can be sort of like an open floor to give the audience any advice that you have, give any commentary that you have. So it's an open floor for you to discuss whatever you would like. Oh,
okay. Well, one of the things, thank you. And by the way, I really appreciate you guys, and this is really a blast to do this. It's great. And I certainly applaud you guys. I know you gentlemen are in high school, and God bless you. You are our future. One thing I'd like to share to everybody is that we need to be our own hero. And what I mean by that is we need to believe in ourselves. We have our family, we have our friends that love us and support us. But sometimes people get busy with that thing called life. And when life comes around, sometimes we don't always get that pat on the back or that encouragement that we need. And what I want to encourage everybody is be your own best friend. Don't be so hard on yourself. Everybody makes mistakes. And like in my classroom, if I make a mistake, if I accidentally call the student the wrong name, I say, okay, guys, say, nice try, Mr. Beltz, nice try, and laugh it off. I think we all need to have more humor. I think we need to do the two things that Jesus Christ taught us, number one, love the Lord your God with all your mind, heart, body, and spirit. And number two, love your neighbors, you love yourself. And in light of all the civil unrest and tensions and negativity in the air, we just need to be more kinder, more gentler, more encouraging, more patient with each other, and just love each other as God and Jesus taught us. That is so important, to love ourselves and to love others. I just can't stress that enough. And if we address those things, the world will be, I believe, a much better place. And so, they say there's two types of people. There's head people and there's heart people. The head people are the ones that intellectualize everything, and that's certainly cool. And then there's people that come from the vantage point of being a heart person, where they're more focused on feelings of others, being compassionate and whatnot. And I definitely think that I'm a heart person. I think if we all had a little more heart, I think the world would be a lot happier, better place. And anyway, I just encourage everybody, be your own best friend, encourage others, forgive what people might say or not say, let it go, realize that we all make mistakes, we're not all perfect, and just do the best you can one day at a time.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Beltz, and thank you so much for taking your time to come onto the podcast. And thank you so much to our listeners for listening to this episode of the podcast, and make sure you tune into future episodes where we will be talking with a child actor. We will also be talking to the world's strongest man, and we just have so much more to talk about. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Well, gentlemen, when will this be posted, do you think?
So that's our show for today. Now roll the credits. High School Not So Much a Musical is hosted by Ayush Agarwal, Nitin Jaladanki, and Rishi Sinha. Narration by Samhit Padala. Music from Louis Luang Relaxation Cafe, Tune Pocket, and Infraction. If you like the show, please recommend it to your friends and family. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.